Hello and welcome to the Schooner Pod, Emergency Edition. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me, we got Ty, and this is one I did not expect to be having uh, at this point in time, but I guess here we are. The Houston Chronicle. If you didn't see it or are just not on Twitter today, Houston Chronicle released a report saying that Oklahoma and Texas were both looking into exploring joining the SEC. Uh, both OU and Texas these very weird, kind of non-committal statements about it. Um, Texas A&M's mad. Oklahoma State's upset. Everything's going on. It's the summer of 2011, right over again, and here we are. Time's a flat circle. Ty, your initial thoughts on this when you saw the news that OU and Texas were looking at making a jump to the SEC? What do you think?
I mean, I still don't believe that. I don't, I haven't seen anything really solid on it. I don't doubt, that shopping around is more or less constantly happening, but I think you've had a chance to read a little bit more than I have. I've kind of been headline skimming it, and nobody. Nobody but the Houston Chronicle, unless it's so hard to speak. And nobody besides the Houston Chronicle, journalistically, is really committing to a line there. So that's kind of interesting. That's really the one source right now. So who knows? I don't see how that benefits OU specifically in any way this year, especially. I guess it would be too late for that anyways, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is interesting. And, if you look on Twitter, you do see a couple pretty credible sources, Kirk Bowles from Texas and some stuff from Kerry Murdoch, where they haven't confirmed it, like journalistically said, like this is a thing that's happening. But what they're saying for the most part is there's more than just like smoke here, that this is actually something that might be happening. This talk is legitimate. And there's a chance that this could be a real deal. And, whether or not it's just a smokescreen to get, a bigger, try to get a bigger sway on the next contract negotiations for TV and everything, or if it's to try to, drum up a race for them with the Big Ten coming in potentially. Who knows? It could just be leverage. But what I do know is this is substantial. When asked for comment, Texas and Oklahoma both did not sound very committal to anything. So I don't know. I think there's real validity to the fact that OU and Texas are not happy in the Big 12. And at least with OU's end, it stems a lot from the OU Nebraska 11 a.m. game, which is just truly something that kind of soiled that weekend. Everyone who's been to a really good college football game knows that like the primetime element adds just a full day. The pageantry to all that it's a bigger deal than you'd think. So OU's clearly upset with the Big 12. Texas, I don't know why they're upset, but I guess they just want to come along too. But it's interesting. Yeah. There's a lot of pros, a lot of cons to it. But yeah, Ty.
I'm sure on the Texas side, there's some stuff that's not visible to us, just because we're not plugged into Texas. Maybe they're having some issues with like what they want with like Longhorn Network or something. Who knows? I'm sure there are, some legitimate things. But I do have, some more thoughts.
A&M is big scared.
A&M is not only scared, A&M is, I think, legitimately very pissed off because it would just absolutely kill them if OU or Texas, let alone both, joined the SEC, because that was like A&M's one thing that they had for recruits.
What are you telling me the guys dressed up as milkmen and yelling weird things while grabbing their crotch was not a big selling point? Or
yeah, no, A&M. It's honestly, no matter what happens with these rumors, it was worth it just to see A&M fans and donors reacting to it could just all be a ploy by Texas just to screw with A&M, which would be amazing. But I did want to say, uh, I think one of the things that sort of scuttled that deal last time with OU leaving the Big 12 allegedly was the sort of package deal um, ideas where OU is really not willing to go to a conference alone. And it seems like Texas, is the same way, and Oklahoma State, would really love to stick with us, and I think we would like to stick with them as well. But a 3-team package deal. I'm not trying to talk shit on Oklahoma State, but they're not as appealing to anyone else as OU and Texas is. Like Texas is, I may have to check my notes. I know some of the California schools are really big, market wise now, especially with China. But Texas is one of the largest markets, period, in college football. Like they could be trash. They're bringing in a ridiculous amount of money. And OU is a nationally, relevant, or the front runner for the championship this year. Like OU is much smaller market wise, but extremely relevant. So if we had to stick with someone personally, I love Bedlam and Stillwater. I don't want Bedlam ever to stop. But if you made me choose between two, I would have to go with playing Texas every year, or having a guaranteed Texas game. If I really had to choose between a guaranteed OSU game or a guaranteed Texas game, there couldn't be both. I'd take Red River every time.
Yeah, OU Texas is a special experience as a whole.
Yeah, it's a bowl game in the middle.
Bedlam is just like, when it's in Stillwater, it's a cool rivalry game. That's the best it is.
Yeah, and it could be, this whole thing could be a leverage move. It would be extremely smart by OU and Texas, because without OU and Texas, without OU, the Big 12 is arguably a group of 5 conference when it comes to football in some ways. And again, I'm not trying to talk crap. We have some good teams, but if you pull out the money of Texas and then the national relevance and sort of consistency of OU, the Big 12 is done. They're, I can't even imagine what would happen to the Big 12 without the 2 teams. I can see an absolute, complete. The Big 12 would just completely dissolve. I can see Oklahoma State maybe getting to the Big 10.
Academics, they wouldn't let them in probably.
Yeah, I could see. I could really see all the teams going elsewhere, even down to what are currently considered Group of 5 conferences. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. As we hear more about it, and get more info.
What I probably think would happen there is the Big 12 just kind of poaches the top tier American teams, get like a Memphis, get, all these teams that they were talking about getting a couple years ago to add onto this Big 12 that we have right now, and just kind of, take the cream of the crop of the American.
Yeah, I guess you do Memphis and Houston.
Yeah, like that type of group. And it's not a great solution, but, let's be honest, the bones of this conference, other than OU and Texas, are not great. I saw on Twitter today, I believe Red Dirt Sport was the one who brought it up, but the second largest stadium in the Big 12 is Iowa State, which is just, it's a far cry from the days where you had Nebraska, where you had Missouri, where you had, Colorado, these massive stadiums, even Texas A&M in the Big 12. That was a lot to lose. And I think over the years, Oklahoma and Texas have really realized that it was a step down. And, there have been great Big 12 teams. Texas Tech, or it's not Texas Tech. Well, kind of Texas Tech in 08, but,
Texas Tech has definitely had nationally relevant teams that have popped up here and there.
True. What I meant to say is TCU's run in, the mid 2000s or 2010s, along with Baylor in the Bryles era. Those were good teams, but let's be honest, that's not a sustainable big type of deal. And I think you lose a little bit of regional stability, but I just don't think I don't think it's anything. I don't think it's worth it, especially if you move OU and Texas into the West, and then Alabama, Auburn out east, bring in Missouri. Then you have a pretty solid base with some rivalries going with OU Missouri, OU Arkansas. You can drive to Texas A&M, drive to Texas. Those are some drivable games.
Yeah. So here's a question actually for you that I guess we can just kind of bounce off of. What does OU or Texas, specifically OU, we're an OU podcast and that's what we can speak to. What does OU really get out of joining the SEC if we did? And what does the SEC get out of that? Because it seems like they're already so top heavy. I can see reasons for OU wanting to go over there, but at the same time, if we're at a point where we think we're at right now, where we're nationally relevant anyways, it doesn't really make sense for us to dive into what is realistically probably going to be a tougher schedule in a lot of cases. And then also risking to have to be in a super, super top heavy conference, because Georgia is still going to be, OU coming over is not going to make Georgia any less good. It's not going to make Bama any less good. It's the way that recruiting is now. It's more or less national anyways. Regional recruiting is gone as we knew it, back in the day. So I don't see a massive benefit. I'm sure there's more on the business side, but I really don't see, if OU can be king of its conference in terms of relevance and have a good enough schedule and the freedom to schedule those out of conference and then have a safer play into the postseason, that sure seems like it makes a lot more sense.
I think that makes, I see where you're coming from. I think those are all good points for pro Big 12 for sure. I just feel like the SEC in general provides a more interesting schedule. You have a little bit more of an interesting base of locations. If you're going to Oxford, if you're going to, Baton Rouge every other year, and then you go off to the East at times. I feel like the Big 12 has become a little stale. Go to the same, you have 9 teams instead of 16, and for the most part, they're pretty bad. You get like one random good team that you play every year, and that's it. Other than that, kind of blowouts. You're playing in a lot of kind of smaller towns, which I truly love, and I do not want to disrespect. But let's be honest, like some of these SEC trips, going to Fayetteville would be really cool. I think it would introduce better games into the schedule. I think it would have bigger TV numbers. I think it would be just more of an interesting season all the way through. Because, Ty, let's be honest, when we go through the season sometimes, it can be a little boring where we're making a preview for, the same team over and over again. And, they're, as we described one time, just computer CPUs you have to get by, where it's not even like a tough game. I got to say, shout out Jesse from Boomtown Hoops. I think I'm more excited than nervous right now, but probably should be more nervous than I am.
Yeah, but so here's a question sort of bouncing off what you just said, with the Big 12 being stale. Wouldn't adding teams and returning to a divisional Big 12 fix that? So, even outside of relevance, adding Memphis and then, someone else, preferably outside of Texas, maybe looking at a team that is drivable to some extent. Well, I guess, there's teams maybe looking at a team in Utah or something that start to spread out. That would certainly increase the interest of games, I guess. But you're right about Fayetteville hard to beat, Louisiana hard to beat. Oxford or Starkville. Even Starkville is really underrated, just because it's kind of washed out by Oxford. But Starkville's a great destination too. So yeah, you're right. There's a lot of stuff. It is really drivable. Even more so than some of our in-conference stuff. So that does make sense. But I don't really think that's maybe not a huge deciding factor for OU. So here comes the other possibility that a lot of people have talked about for a while is, why doesn't OU just go independent, especially with the NCAA becoming less relevant, conferences becoming less relevant, recruiting wise and everything else? Why wouldn't we go that route?
I think the biggest problem with independence is having to, forge together a schedule that's good every year. I know Notre Dame has their deal with the ACC where it's a little bit easier for them. BYU puts a decent schedule together, but it's nothing on the tier of what you would even get in the Big 12 in terms of consistently getting good teams over and over again, which is tough. It could be doable, but it would be a bit of a stretch. And personally, I've flirted with the idea myself, but I don't think it's probably the right answer.
Yeah.
Shout out to Witty. I also want to see OU at Death Valley, even though that would definitely probably kill me.
That would be really cool.
I don't know what would get me first, the Boos or the LSU fans.
Yeah.
Probably both.
So here's oh yeah, Louisiana's crazy. I'll never forget walking into a Walmart and the first like 3 aisles of Walmart just being liquor. What kind of place is this?
Ty, you're a resident. You grew up a lot of your time in the South. Came to OU from Mississippi.
Yeah.
How would the culture fit with OU into the SEC? Does that make sense?
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. It is. I personally, having lived in both, it is. I think it is very different. You get this idea of sort of southern states, but there's really, depending on how you want to define it, 4 or 5 really different sort of cultures. You got the southern states that are like Virginia and North Carolina. I've lived in both of those as well. And South Carolina, lived there. So I've lived in southern state wise. I've lived in Florida, Oklahoma, if you want to count it, Mississippi, both Carolinas and Virginia. And I can tell you that the Carolinas are kind of their own thing. Virginia is kind of its own thing culturally. Florida obviously is Florida. Everybody knows that. Louisiana is kind of its own culture around New Orleans, but just sort of Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and then northern Louisiana is really its own thing. It's separate culturally from Tennessee. It's more mountain, people. Arkansas is kind of its own thing. Oklahoma and Texas, I really believe culturally are very similar and very much their own thing. And I think when you really start to experience like Mississippi, a lot of Louisiana, I know Jameson's from Louisiana, so maybe we can get him on and talk about that. But it is very different, I think, culturally, in a lot of ways that would really surprise you. But yeah, I think it would be a good fit, team wise and fan base wise. You have that same level of passion and that same level of taking it. I don't know if taking it seriously is the right word. And then outside of, Atlanta and Louisiana, in Mississippi and in Alabama, you really get that same OU type feeling where this is the peak of football in your state. There's a lot of Saints fans in Mississippi. Nobody's really a fan of any of the Tennessee teams, I think, even in Tennessee. But yeah, there's a lot of Saints fans, a lot of Falcons fans, and things like that. But the SEC football is it, which would be a really good fit, for OU, because that's how OU is as well. We have our team that's sort of the peak of football in Oklahoma, and then same for Texas. There's no pro football team in Texas, so.
That one took a second. That's funny.
Yeah, that was a long-winded answer, but same but different.
So we got some good stuff going in the chat here. A&M ain't big scared of shit. I'm just they probably shouldn't be, because they've built a pretty good program out in the SEC. They can handle their own. It wouldn't be like the old Big 12 days, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I will say they shouldn't want this, because it takes away from their biggest thing being, the only Texas team in the SEC. That is a big draw for A&M. I think that would hurt them a little bit. I think we can all be realistic that I think that hurts their recruiting draw, probably more than anybody else in the SEC. But no, it wouldn't devastate them. They'd be fine. The facilities they've built up there, their stadium is is one of the best in the country. That being said, they
Yeah.
probably do not want this at all.
Yeah, no, and A&M, we've yet to really see, and I hate to make this a talking point of everything, but it's such a huge thing. We've yet to really see the impact on recruiting of the NIL deals, and we all know that it's ripe for, those sort of the donor owns a dealership. Let me give you $1 million a year contract to make commercials for my car dealership type thing.
A&M has tech sags out here shelling out money.
Yeah, we know that stuff is going to happen. Recruiting wise, just openly, because it's allowed now. And I personally, I think it'll eventually even out. I think there's going to be a big swing that we've yet to see in terms of just ridiculous deals, and then it'll start to even out. But I think it's a good thing. But I think that's going to be really big for A&M. I think because A&M has deeper pockets than a lot of their competitors that are traditionally better. A&M has deeper pockets than Auburn. They've got deeper pockets than LSU. I'm almost absolutely sure they've got deeper pockets than Bama, and that can start to make a difference for sure. So A&M definitely does not want Texas in the same region with even deeper pockets to come in and play their thing. What I do want to bring up, Bobby, and hear your thoughts on it is the least likely but most interesting potential realignment conversation for OU. And that's I'll call it a fact. That's the fact that OU and Texas together, just those two, realistically have the power to start their own conference. What do you think about that?
My thing is, I feel like if OU and Texas just started their own thing, that's kind of what we're already at. Other than all you would do is just remove Big 12 leadership and bring in teams that are kind of like that. I don't think it would work. I'm not a fan of it. It would probably end up just being like the Southwest Conference Junior. That is an interesting.
I really think you wouldn't get anyone from the SEC because of the brand. But I think you would be able to take whoever you wanted from the Big 12, which would probably be most of the Big 12. You would potentially be able to sway teams maybe that have left. I think you would have a really, really good pitch for Nebraska. I don't think that would really add anything for us at all.
I will say, the biggest problem with Nebraska is they do not want to deal with Texas. Nobody really wants to deal with Texas because they are a toxic force. And true. I think that would be the biggest problem is everyone would look at Texas. It's like the wolf inviting the chickens into into its den. It's you know what Texas is. So voluntarily, letting them run the show in a way is like the worst thing you could do. Not to run all over your argument it's not like it objectively it's not going to happen. But I do think that if you were to take any two teams in college football or just pairings of two teams, Oklahoma and Texas, I think would for sure be up there in terms of teams that would be able to sway relevant people to come over and do some, new stuff. They would be the best two teams to start a conference for sure. I definitely agree with that. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it pans out. I think it's not the worst fit in the world. The OU to the SEC with Texas. I think, I agree with you. I think it's better to go with Texas than to go with OSU. Even if we have to deal with that. And I think going with Texas to the SEC, I think the SEC negates a lot of the weird, annoying, elements of Texas. They'd probably have to give up the Longhorn Network. Or figure out some way to redo, maybe fold the Longhorn Network into the SEC network. I don't know what they would do, but I feel like the biggest problems we have with Texas would get negated. Wouldn't have to deal with Fox, which is the worst. So,
yeah, I really don't. If I'm being honest, I don't. It's still not adding up in terms of anything other than just leverage against the Big 12. I think that's the most realistic thing. I really, really do think it's we're constantly exploring our options, as anyone would be. But the SEC is already so top heavy. It makes sense for them, but like aren't they at 14 teams already?
Yeah, this would be a 16-team deal.
Yeah,
which would basically just be 2 tiny conferences.
Yeah, so I mean, at that point, we're getting into uncharted territory. But I guess it makes sense for them, especially they have their own network already. The market size of Texas is absurd, and the relevance of OU at that point. If you pull OU and Texas into the SEC, then at that point, I'm not trying to be like an OU homer, but you really do have the argument for an all SEC playoff, even coming into the next couple of years. No disrespect to Carolina or Clemson, but you get there's some fair arguments there.
It would get very SEC invitational ish.
But it's still it makes sense for OU from like a fan standpoint, but I'm not trying to give the SEC too much credit, but like up to this point, OU hasn't even ironed out our random losses to teams from Kansas. I'm not so sure that jumping into an SEC West schedule plus Red River is the best thing for our national relevance. I honestly think that we can beat any one of those teams this next year and in the postseason, but that strength of schedule does wear on you. And if we're not even able to win in Manhattan, Kansas, I would hate for us to have a schedule where we're playing in Death Valley, we're playing, at Bama at like a night game, we're playing, Texas still is always going to be difficult for us, even when we blow them out. We're playing in College Station and all those things. Like it's not something I don't think that really makes the smartest sense for OU.
I think the biggest issue would be Texas for it. Like Texas, I don't know what they're doing with it. That would make no sense to me for sure. But I feel like with OU, it's a situation where I feel like you would have less of those, we fall asleep and just don't even care type of games. I think they would try to get up for more of the games, but I agree. I feel like a trap game in Starkville or a trap game in Oxford is a way bigger trap than Manhattan. That is true. But I don't know. I feel like OU's gotten bored with the Big 12. I feel like OU fans have gotten bored with the Big 12. And I think, with the conference and specifically, how they handle leadership, how they just flat out refuse to, help us out on things like, the OU Nebraska game being at 11 a.m. It's time to go. We don't want big noon Sunday.
And maybe you're right. And I think to some extent, ultimately, even these rumors, if they are true, regardless of intent, I think it is good to see in terms of the business side, because that's really what this is. It is really good to see OU and Texas working together because we're the biggest keys there. If we could, like you said, if we could get Texas to drop the Longhorn Network, if we could get Texas to roll in, with us and get the conference in step with OU and Texas to really start to put our foot down with TV deals and stuff like that, then that fixes all of our problems already without us having to go anywhere. I understand, there's, the excitement of new games and new places to play. But if we had been playing those places for the past 100 years, you'd be saying the same thing about, how neat it would be to play in Manhattan, Kansas, or to play in whatever, because it's new. Like there's that novelty there, that would wear off. So yeah. I think the best thing for OU would be to remain in the Big 12 and to get Texas to be more of a team player conference wise, because they have the power to go do Longhorn Network and to go do, we don't really care that much about the TV deals because we're not that relevant. And when we're kind of good, we get good TV deals automatically because our market, we're just going to make our own thing, go in the corner and do our own thing with our own toys, which doesn't help us because OU's never really going to be, unless we turn like a Bama dynasty and we start winning, 2 to 3 national championships back to back consistently, we're never going to be a big market team anywhere close to Texas.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just a difference between Texas having the money they do with their university, being located in Austin, Texas, which is by all means a massive. I mean, it's the state capital of one of the biggest states in the in the United States. Obviously, it's a bigger deal, and it hasn't.
Yeah, it's the fastest growing economically. It's the fastest growing place in the world.
Yeah,
period.
It's a big deal.
It's Joe Rogan lives there.
That's funny. Yeah, it would be great for big for podcasting, I guess. But it's. I feel like it has a bigger vibe to it. I know it's the novelty, but I also just feel like the stadiums are bigger. The traditions seem like a little bit
they do football wise. They do care more for sure.
Yeah,
but then there's they care more about like baseball too. Like baseball, college baseball is only really relevant in like Mississippi and some other parts of the SEC. So I mean,
baseball would be a good fit for Texas for sure. That would be a big boost for them. Basketball wouldn't be the worst. The SEC is not an awful basketball conference, but I don't know. I feel like
people have down years too. That's an important thing to remember. Baylor has really crashed hard, but turn the clock back a few years. Baylor was a team that was scaring everybody.
Yeah, but that's like a regression to the mean, though. That's a regression to what Baylor's always been. So the conference
that is true, but I mean, like there's other teams that have been relevant, and have the potential to be relevant within the Big 12, and they're just kind of in downtimes right now. And it's kind of at myself here, but I don't think that anyone really is giving Iowa State the credit that they deserve, or Matt Campbell, the credit that he deserves for what he's done up there. That is a dangerous team to anyone in college football, but it's the brand is Iowa State. Nobody respects it until they see it. Like Iowa State is almost, if I'm being completely honest here, they're like UCF level. Like, it's what do they have to do? Like, even if they won out, the storyline would be, if we're being realistic, if Iowa State could go undefeated this next year, and the storyline would be, OU was overhyped. Like, that would be the storyline that you would get for Iowa State putting out an absolutely dominant team. Like, it's maybe the SEC does fix that, because then you have the idea that everyone in the SEC is amazing, and you could have a Vanderbilt team go undefeated, and everyone will be like, oh my God, this is the greatest college football team that's ever played. And it's only because it's the SEC. Whereas if you have Iowa State go undefeated and win the national championship, never going to happen. But people would be like, oh, it was a down year for all the big teams. It was a fluke type thing. So
yeah,
who knows?
It's like the same thing with the NBA right now, where what they called this year's finals a bit of a disappointment, despite the fact it was really good. And the only issue was it was Phoenix and Milwaukee that they had a problem with, the cities and the brands. But
yeah, and because it's you don't have I guess you had some big names, but they're not traditionally known. It's not the Lakers. Oh, it's not the Heat. Oh, it's not the whatever. I love the Phoenix. It's a side tangent. I love both those teams. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome. It was a very fun. Yeah, your Bucks
have some of the best branding. Period.
You've been a Milwaukee Bucks fan since 2014, man, or even prior.
I've been a lifelong Bucks fan. I forgot.
That is actually.
I'm also a Suns fan.
Oh yes,
NBA is just entirely based off of branding, really.
Fair enough. Hey, both have great branding.
The Suns have. In all of professional sports around the world, the Suns have some of the best branding, I think.
Yeah, definitely some of the best throwbacks for sure.
The black with the orange and purple is just...
It's a good look. Yeah. It's a damn good look. But, I think we've beaten this thing to death as it's a rumor. But something's going to happen. I think something's going to happen. But we'll see. We've done this before.
More will come of this for sure, just looking at the statements that the teams released. Even if there was no intent to go anywhere, this is going to cause changes. This is going to cause ripple effects regardless. So, we're already seeing panicking from A&M. We're already seeing, Oklahoma State being like the hurt little brother that wasn't invited to come like play, Oklahoma State releasing their statement like anyone cared.
Like we're going to be like, oh no, Oklahoma State, what are we going to do now?
Oklahoma State basically went to the Big 12 and was like, hey, or Oklahoma State came out to OU and was like, hey, Mom said it's my turn to release a statement. Like, they're just kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, I recently saw a thing from some Baylor fans who were really upset about this, and I don't know. I think Texas would be completely out of their league here, but I think OU can compete, not win titles, but I think they can snag one from Alabama here and there. If Auburn could do it, I'm just saying OU can do it.
Yeah, realistically. Texas, and again, I'm not trying to talk. I think Texas is on its way back to being, at least relevant or competitive within the conference, but they're not competitive where they're at right now. So I don't think that Texas is delusional enough to think that they're going to go to the SEC and immediately start winning. I think for them, it's all, business side and brand side,
Yeah, they're like, we get the A&M game back. We're in a bigger league. We got that excitement. Yeah, we'll go 7-4, or probably worse than that. But
no. Here's honestly, I think because I really do believe in the SEC being really top heavy. You've had those flukes of those teams that are legitimately just everything works, like LSU. When they won the championship, but I really do think that there's a lot of over. I think that Texas would come over and do just as good, as they lose to OU, they lose to Bama if they played them. Well, they'd maybe drop another game, but I don't think they'd be a 4-loss team, even in the SEC West. Well, I think it would shock a lot of people, how well they performed.
Well, let's go. Let's take a look at this. This would be the technical SEC West if OU and Texas joined. Let's go ahead and move Alabama and Auburn to the east because that makes more geographical sense for them. And let's move Missouri back.
I love that potential scenario because then OU and Texas have found a way to fuck over both A&M and also Georgia.
Oh yeah, and Georgia, Florida, so Tennessee. Oh God, yeah, it would be a disaster for the East.
Tennessee fans are always mad, and then they're also losing every game. So it wouldn't matter, no matter what happens. Tennessee fans are going to be mad.
True. So okay, let me give you this rundown. This year, how many games does Texas win in this new SEC West division? Let's start with OU. Yeah. OU, win or loss?
Loss.
Ole Miss.
Where is it being played?
Let's say home. Let's say all of these. Let's give Texas the benefit of the doubt. These are all home games for some reason.
Home for Texas early in the season. Potential overtime loss. Probably a win.
Okay. Yeah, probably a win.
I'll go win here. Hey, let me write these down. So.
Yeah. So Ole Miss. So Texas beats Ole Miss
Texas
in Austin.
Would win that one.
Yeah, we're giving Texas benefit of the doubt here. These are home games. Mississippi State.
Win. Oh, for sure win.
Do they win on the road, do you think?
Yeah, they win regardless.
Yeah. Okay. LSU.
Win. Oh, for sure win. Yeah.
Okay.
LSU's
going to bounce back, I think.
No.
So that makes them what, 3? So they're 3-1. Missouri in Austin.
I'll have to give him. I can see him losing, but if I gave him Ole Miss, then I'm going to give him Missouri.
Okay.
Dropping that one.
And I believe
Arkansas they lose.
This is a real game they're playing, by the way. They're playing this one at Fayetteville in real life. So that's
what week?
Like week 2.
Oh yeah, no, that's a loss. So they're 4-2 right now.
They're 4-2. So they go 4-2 in their division. Then, wait, who am I missing? LSU, the 2 Mississippi teams. OU. Oh, Texas A&M.
Win. Oh yeah, win.
They beat A&M.
Yeah, for sure.
Really?
A&M
This
is
is a good. It's a
I
good.
honestly believe that A&M is super overrated.
Yeah, but I think this is Texas though. I don't think Texas is very good.
I honestly think
Not
that
better than
Texas
A&M,
is I think that Texas is on its way back.
but not this year. I don't think this year.
You know what we need is we need national gambling legislation, because that would Sarkeesian would go off the deep end again.
So, oh God, it's time to end the podcast probably. But yeah, so you think Texas would go 5-2 in their first year? So yeah, this isn't an issue competition wise. If Texas goes 5-2 in the SEC West, I think that's bold. I don't know if I would go with that, but also
okay, you're talking about a hypothetical SEC West,
true,
because I understand you have OU in Texas, but there's potential, that they come over and maybe Bama and Auburn don't move at all, or maybe one of them moves. I could see them moving Bama just to keep that. I could see them not wanting OU and Bama in the same conference, especially if you're going to keep LSU over there or division. Because I think the SEC respects LSU and Auburn both a little bit more than Georgia, regardless of what Georgia does. But because it's just one of those brand things, it's college football is so just subjective with I hate to. I think old money is the best term to use for it. If you don't have a lineage, a pedigree, if you weren't winning championships in the 1800s, then people are okay. So,
which is the SEC lineage is really weird. Shout out to Tulane for forever fumbling the bag by intentionally leaving the SEC.
What if the Big 12 added Tulane and Memphis?
I don't want that.
Yeah, okay, but that solves relevancy in basketball. Memphis adds something there. A little bit, maybe, potentially, but that adds a really interesting place to go play. There's a Bass Pro Pyramid. And you add Tulane. Tulane is cooler than LSU. Tulane is in New Orleans. That would be an awesome conference game all the time, and that's a drivable distance. I know it's one of our non-conferences coming up, and it's not because Tulane is any good or any relevant. They have really cool uniforms, but that's a really cool place to go play in New Orleans.
Yeah, but it's not the Superdome, and the team isn't good. I want to see good football along with the cool stuff. I feel like even though you'll lose the coolness with Baton Rouge to New Orleans, you get a good game out of it, and that is truly one of the best atmospheres in college football. So I don't know. I think it's I would much rather jump ship. I think the Big 12 has lost all of the good teams that it could add. I'm going
to be completely honest. The only thing that I really want conference-wise is for OU to have recurring home and homes with Colorado somehow. I know that wasn't even a thing in the Big 12 because we had different divisions, but that would be super cool.
Well, I mean, it was a thing in the Big 8 when we played them literally home and home.
Yeah, which is where I was trying to go with my hypothetical new conference idea.
So hypothetical. Let's do this hypothetical. Let's go with the plan OU originally wanted to do, and let's trade one bad conference for another. Go to the Pac-12. You bring OU, Texas.
It's terrible.
You can bring two more. Bring Oklahoma State and maybe throw a dart at the board. TCU, Baylor, take your pick. Or Kansas, that could work for basketball.
Okay, I bring them for the basketball relevancy, but
it doesn't work because
I'd probably have to go with TCU if I'm being honest. I'm a known hater of Waco. Nothing in Kansas is relevant if we exclude basketball. We're bringing Oklahoma State, who would be my next choice besides Texas. Yeah. Fort Worth is cool, man. Yeah. Fort Worth is cool. TCU. Really good academically, super. It's drivable for the fans because then you have at least a couple of games a year that for sure are going to be within traffic. Yep. We'll say within 2.5 hours of OU. You have at least all of our home games, Stillwater, no matter what. Red River, no matter what. TCU,
Arizona.
no matter what.
The Arizona schools aren't awful.
How are you going to drive to Arizona in 2.5 hours?
Well, not in 2.5 hours. I'm just saying overall drive.
Yeah, no, they're not. In flight wise, it's like 90 minutes.
Yeah, just get a flight out to Phoenix, call it good.
Yeah, Arizona State is super, super cool stadium.
But where it doesn't work is
it's terrible for the fans.
You're in the exact same issue. You're still on a Fox contract. You have Larry Scott and the Pac-12 are as bad as it gets. It's somehow make the Big 12 look competent. So you're trading one bad conference for another, even though you're getting some cool games. Going out to USC maybe would be nice.
I don't know. I really think that the Pac-12 with, let's say, Texas, Oklahoma State, OU, and TCU, because that's kind of what we settled on, is a much better conference than the Big 12. I don't know why it took me forever to think of the Big 12. But I would personally, if we're going to do the Pac-12, because at that point, we just have games that are just absurdly far away, even by flight. Washington and everything else, or Oregon, the recurring games, it's just absurd. And at that point, I would rather us go to the ACC.
If we, that works. That works.
Talk about the cultural fit for the OU and the SEC. We would also mesh with a lot of the ACC. We don't culturally and fan base wise. And
we do not have a state that connects with the ACC, and the Pac-12 that doesn't work better. Well, wait, no, that doesn't count if we take West Virginia with us. I'm saying the Big 12. Sorry, not the Big 12. Oklahoma is not connected to anyone in the ACC. They are in the SEC.
Who are we connected to? We touch Colorado.
We touch Colorado.
Well, if that gets us a game in Boulder every other year.
We're just trying to find scenarios to get us in Boulder.
Actually, I don't know if I want that because I'm kind of a Colorado fan.
Yeah, just go to Colorado if you want to. Let's schedule a home and home and try to do it like OU Nebraska or something. I don't know. Have an OU Nebraska or a OU Colorado game. Maybe everyone plays each other. A little triumvirate. OU Nebraska and Colorado all play each other like some sort of weird three-way. Home and home. I
don't know. Maybe coming up. I have a feeling for the fans that are still listening. I don't know why they would be at this point. 45 minutes in,
people love. I have realignment.
I have a feeling that we're going to be doing podcasts a little more frequently coming up. Maybe once a week. So I think maybe a good 30-minute podcast before the season starts would be just a hypothetical dream realignment for all of CFB. There's a lot of neat scenarios and things out there. If you just started tabula rasa and had to create a conference, what you would do, that might be a neat pod to get some people on and stuff. So
yeah, just
because I think we're at that point right now. We've talked down the existing rumors and the existing statements. I don't think any more news is going to come out tonight.
No,
about this realignment stuff. Eventually, there's going to be secondary and tertiary effects that occur, but yeah, I think we've kind of talked it down a lot. We're getting into the,
we talked about
hypotheticals here.
We talked about a Pac-12 hypothetical, which is how we've the horse is very deceived.
We talked about making a deal with the ACC to bring TCU. So
no, this one probably might need to get trimmed a little bit for the pod cut, but never know. People love realignment talk, so we'll answer one question because I just saw it. Do you think it'll drive more or less recruits to Big 12 schools with this news, or if it actually happens? So I think if this deal falls apart, it's going to be incredibly painful for the Big 12 to recover, for OU and Texas even to recover, because this is a direct sign that OU and Texas do not believe in the Big 12 and are trying to actively leave. I think that's a bad look for it's a bad look for everyone else, and it's a worse look if it doesn't work for OU.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a way where it doesn't work for OU, right? Because if OU tries to go to the SEC, they say no, then it looks bad on OU. Yeah, but there's we wouldn't be having talks. Like we wouldn't get to a point where it's like we're sitting in a conference room, right, and we sign the contract and pass it across the table, and the SEC is like, no, like that wouldn't happen. So it's like I don't think there's a way where it fails for OU publicly, because OU can, no matter what happens, OU and Texas can come back and be like, oh, like we were playing 4D chess. This was to like get more leverage with like the Big 12. Like we wanted the deal to fall through. Like we were the puppet master the whole time. So I don't think there's a way where OU loses. OU specifically and Texas specifically will not lose face here, period. Right? Because we have all of the power in this deal. Like, because the SEC wouldn't be talking to us, period, unless it brought something to us. Like the SEC has no reason to try to like undercut the Big 12. Like the Big 12 as a conference is completely irrelevant to the SEC. Like they're not playing, Game of Thrones like in the background, trying to like undercut the Big 12. Like it's OU and Texas have the power here regardless to do what we want. So I don't think there's a way it fails for OU. I do think it hurts the Big 12 as a whole recruiting wise. I think it hurts, our other teams, because then it shows like it really shows, no matter how we feel, that we don't really respect them that much. If we're just trying to like, hey, like we don't want to play these guys. Like if OU thinks we're going to beat whoever we play, we'd rather play these teams over here because at least it would be more interesting when we win. That is a pretty big slap in the face to the other teams. But I also think that like recruiting has changed so much in so many ways, just even in the past 5 years, and how it's really national. I mean, our starting quarterback is from Phoenix, Arizona, and we got a bunch of dudes on the team, from all over. And it's hard to say necessarily who's going to be a starter here and there. But we have guys, starting from all over. Like we're getting guys.
Nelson, number one recruit from California, and some people's
have guys,
number one quarterback out there.
Yeah, and Riley has not won a championship. Like we have guys that during the Switzer era, at like the peak of the Switzer era, where we were just winning, we were extremely dominant minus some flukes with Miami. We could never have imagined getting some of the guys that we're getting now in terms of just where they're located. Part of that is because, the California teams are now nationally irrelevant as a whole, and there's more that plays into it. But recruiting is very much a national thing, and there's so much player and student athlete, if we want to use that term, agency now and ability for them to make decisions that we're seeing. Guys aren't just going to, oh, this is my closest school. Like I'm from Oklahoma, the coach visited, I go to Broken Arrow or Jinx or whoever's good at football high school wise in Oklahoma right now, and the coach visited, so I'm going to go there. We have guys that are going, I'm the number one or number whatever quarterback in the nation. Lincoln Riley has gotten every single one of his quarterbacks at least to the Heisman ceremony, period, and 2/3 of them, or 50% of it, 2 out of 4, 50% of Lincoln Riley's quarterbacks have won the Heisman. Like, I'm a quarterback, I'm going to go there. Because every single one of them has gone to the NFL.
I agree. Quarterback-wise, it's going to be fine for OU. I think
it's the same.
OU's going to be OU. They'll be fine.
You get that with linemen. We're getting that with running backs now, too. Especially, and you see that at other schools. You see guys going, I'm good at this position. I want to go play for this coach regardless of where he is. There's still some, there's still, like Baker Mayfield was an OU fan growing up, decided to transfer to OU after. Like that does still play a part. But guys aren't really restricted to their region anymore or conference really even. So I don't know if that really hurts OU and Texas recruiting wise. The conference, yes.
Fair enough. We do got another question I just want to answer really quick. I'll probably end up rearranging some stuff because we have actually answered this earlier in the show. What happens to the Big 12 if OU and Texas leave? Do we rebuild with, or does the Big 12 rebuild with top G5 schools? And a couple options of BYU, Boise, Memphis, a rush to the Pac-12 for teams like Texas Tech or TCU. we covered it a little bit earlier in this in this stream. I think that the Big 12 stays together, tries to rebuild. Just geographically, I don't know if Texas Tech and TCU work. I think culture works well for TCU if they're in the Pac-12. But I think they would try to go after a Boise or a Memphis or Houston's on the table as well. I think they try to get the top G5 teams and try to build like a super Central American school. But yeah, thanks for the question, Happiness 97. Let me know what you want in the chat. Like, what do you hope happens here? And Ty, what do you think? How do you think?
So can I just say I've been a long time proponent of adding Houston. It might just be ignorance, really, but I think the Big 12 should add Houston. I don't think they would. I don't think it hurts the Big 12 in any way, and it ties in the city of Houston to the Big 12.
It's about just having too many Texas teams. Having Texas have too much
but
power.
Already the Texas Conference, But we
don't want to be even more the Texas Conference.
Because recruiting wise, OU is more or less. There's probably some Oklahoma high school football fans that are going to be offended by this, but like recruiting wise, OU is more or less a Texas team. I don't want to commit to that, but you can make an argument that OU is also sort of a Texas team. We're sort of the second or the number one team in the Dallas area, I'd argue.
We are pretty much a Texas team.
Home games for us, we are a Dallas team. So there's that argument. I do want to say Big 12 or BYU, I think, is the holy grail for anyone. BYU is extremely underrated academically. If you look at where BYU graduates of really any major are going to work, it is insane. BYU is, I don't want to say Stanford level, but they are getting very close to being. They're a very, very, very good school, business wise and graduate wise and graduate placement wise. Part of that is, some other stuff that has to do with other things. But BYU is a massive fan base. BYU is a religious school like Notre Dame, so you have those sort of people that are just automatically BYU fans no matter where they're from because they're Mormons. And BYU is not bad sports-wise. And BYU is they're an amazing location. Like Utah is beautiful.
Provo is excellent. Cool.
Yeah, so that BYU, if I could add one team that wasn't independent, I didn't talk about them earlier in the podcast, because I really don't think it would ever happen, because BYU could go to the Pac or, the Big 12 at any moment if they wanted to. Like, they have the power there for sure.
Yeah.
I don't think it would happen because it hasn't happened. But yeah, BYU, I think, is the holy grail of teams that we could add. So I would love for that.
I will say Happiness 97 brings up a good point. They will not play on Sunday. Strict thing, and I know that's not an issue for football, but it is for tournaments. It's for countless amounts of other sports.
I think they are worth. If we could make it happen as a conference, personally, I think they're absolutely worth accommodating. It would help us in many ways as a fan base. It's a difficult. You'd have to fly really to get there as a fan, but even adding, two teams to the Big 12, you could return to divisional, and then it wouldn't be a yearly thing. But it's BYU. If I could add anyone, they would be my number one choice for sure.
For sure, I think there's a lot of value in BYU for sure. But Ty, we've talked about a rumor for about an hour. We're getting in game day form here. I'm loving it. So. This is very on brand for us. So if you liked what you saw, we will be talking OU football a lot this year, multiple pods per week during the season, and we talk Big 12 a lot as well with our weekend spread stuff. So one thing is for sure, OU is going to be around for a while in the Big 12. So who knows how long, but we'll see. Ty, any final thoughts before we sign off on this?
I think just to sort of reel back to where I started personally is it's just rumors and nothing's going to happen this year. Even if we signed a contract right now, nothing's going to happen for this next season. So no matter what, this is a fish that is very far from the boat. If anyone's familiar with that sort of closest fish to the boat metaphor. So obviously, as fans, it doesn't matter what we're thinking or talking about in terms of OU, but this is not really. We got bigger fish closer to the boat, especially as we roll into the end of July. So
absolutely.
This is definitely interesting, and I think there's going to be more that comes of this, regardless. Now that we've seen statements from OU and Texas, we know that at least a meeting or some level of discussion occurred. So there's going to be more news that comes. Period. Whether it's some changes to the way the Big 12 does things or, some wild stuff. So there's going to be more news, but I wouldn't lose any sleep over it, and I wouldn't be sitting on, my phone or computer constantly refreshing Twitter or the news to get some more news from this. I don't think it's going to be anything, breaking, developing story type thing. It was now, but it's going to simmer for a bit.
It was a nice bit of nice little well of information that shook it up a little bit from what we got. This off season is long and full of just garbage content, so it was nice to actually jump on something tangible for sure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Ty, we will have more going forward where we'll actually talk about football. This is just kind of a little emergency pod. We'll get the crew together. We're about to go into our season previews, our best gambling stuff as usual, in terms of best props, best Heisman odds. Those are always fun. So keep an eye out for that. We got a lot of content coming your way. Trust me when I say that. We got some really big stuff coming down the pipeline. So get excited. It's going to be a fun year. So. For me and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We'll catch you next time. Wanted to do my sign off for the podcast. Just wanted to catch Happiness 97 up. OU and Texas. There was a rumor today, less of a rumor, more of a Houston Chronicle article that said that OU and Texas have had conversations with the SEC and that they are going to try to they're entertaining the idea of going to the SEC. Nothing's confirmed yet. We don't know for sure. But it is something that's happening. I kind of think there's smoke to this. I don't know if it's 100% sure. At the SEC still has to vote them in. I think OU's mad and they're going to try their best to get in. So that's my thought. I think there's probably a pretty good chance they really try to make something happen of this. But we just recorded a pretty big show on this. So once it's reloaded and everything, our thoughts are pretty deep on this. So definitely loop back around to this Happiness and check it out. So thanks for the engagement. Appreciate it. And so I'm ending the stream, but